All right, welcome back to the Sport Management and Leadership Speaker Series. I'm Casey Rudzinski, aka Dr. R. We'll be sharing stories, highlighting helpful hints, and leaving leadership lessons in the sport and athletic industry. Our guest today is Kyle Adams, who's a Deputy Director of Athletics at Delaware State University, longtime girls and women's basketball coach, and author. Welcome, Kyle. I had to put that in there.
I appreciate that, Casey. I'm honored to share just a little bit of my journey in any way I can with your students. And your,
Cool. So tell me, other than the titles that I gave, anything else you want to share? You do a lot of things like, do you want to talk about kind of the work you've been doing a little bit, Cheney State, maybe recognize that, bigger than the ball, just some of those things, if you want to hit on those before we dive into college athletics?
Yeah, and again, Casey, thank you for this opportunity. I'm always humble when I get an opportunity to kind of talk about some of the different things I've been able to do in and around college athletics. As Casey shared, I was a coach at various levels. I've had an opportunity to coach at every level of college basketball, junior college, NCAA Division I, II, III, NAIA, you name it, I've coached it. I've coached men, I've coached women. I've found my greatest successes have come in my time in coaching women, and just how it expanded and shaped me and helped me stretch who I needed to be as a man to help those young ladies grow. But in addition to my work in coaching, I kind of always had a really unique sensitivity to the holistic student athlete experience and what that needs to look like for student athletes. As a young professional, I got to work in mental health, so I've always had a different level of sensitivity to the mental health of student athletes and coaches. So in 2019, I started a business called It's Bigger Than the Ball, where I wanted to take my experiences and my talent and the expertise that I feel like I've had in all this time in college athletics and be able to help improve coaches, institutions, coaching staffs, organizations, and expanding their leadership capacity. We recognize how young people are changing. People are changing. And people in leadership and educators, if we're not continuing to grow and adapt, we can't accurately meet the needs of those that we've been called to serve. So I've been blessed to be able to do workshops and do a lot of speaking on different various topics. As Casey shared, I'm a graduate of Cheney University. You guys can see behind me. I have some of the promotional materials that we've used to highlight the Cheney State, the 1982 Cheney State team, which holds the distinction of being the only HBCU men or women at the Division I level to play in a national championship game. So, as a coach there, as a student there, I always wanted to connect our student athletes to those women that played there. And then I just felt compelled to really help to elevate their story. Casey, I'm actually in a doctoral program here, and my subject of research is on what these women did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
kudos to you.
Working on a phenomenological case study to just really talk about the different things that impacted those women's journeys and going to Cheney, but also why we haven't seen another HBCU do what they've done in the last 42 years. So that's a big topic of study for me. Casey have shared about the book, which I really felt compelled to start to share my journey.
Discarding the Mask. Why'd you pick that title out of all the titles? I know a lot. Go ahead.
Casey, one of my thought partners, his name is Tracy Jones. He kind of came up with that title, and just we wear a lot of masks.
Mm-hmm.
When we work for these institutions, when we're trying to ascend it on these levels, and I think with me really starting to see my own entrepreneurial endeavors, I wanted to discard some of those different things. I think sometimes guys, or people take jobs and they have to wear these masks to maintain them a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get to a place where I didn't have to wear a mask. I could be my true and authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
and I could operate in environments that truly value them. And if there wasn't reciprocal value or congruency, then it might not be a good fit, and that'd be fine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that title really has a lot to do with um, just when we read books about and stories, you hear all the positives and the great
Mm-hmm.
stories. That book has it has some triumphs, but also shares some of my failures and things that I could have done better and things that I've learned. And I think with this generation, if we're going to really be able to lead them effectively, we got to be able to share all of who we are and sharing our frailties with them also. So
That,
I had a lot
that's,
to that type.
that's a good segue into this next topic area that I just want to hit on is this week we'll cover in the transfer portal in our class. And we've seen a lot of student athletes transfer different sports for different reasons, right? And so one of the reasons that I've seen is that a lot of student athletes seek authenticity in their coaches, right? They want someone who's going to be able to connect to them on a deeper level, not just the coach student athlete, right? They want whether it's mentorship or guidance in their life. So talk about, because you're at the college level and you see things differently with the transfer portal. Talk a little bit about that and what your thoughts on where it's at right now.
Uh, we have a lot of thoughts about the transfer portal, and we're experiencing the effects of it, like many schools are. Um, I just think that I tell our coaches, we're in an unprecedented time in college athletics. We've never seen a time
Mm-hmm.
like this before in college athletics. And I think people in the sports industry, um, they can't be caught up on what it used to be. They
Mm-hmm.
really have to start to develop some dexterity and thought process around where it's headed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know, in the NCAA, uh, allowing for student athletes to move from institution to institution, I feel like it's important for coaches and administrators. They've got to be more nimble and agile in what it is their value proposition is to keep student athletes, right? And I think when you start to think about different, you think about when kids went to college to play a sport, the coach would usually try to shield them from joining a fraternity or getting involved in student government.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're talking a lot about, hey, coach, you might want to allow, you might want your students to get more engaged on campus because those are, you know, those are points of contact that when those kids start thinking about leaving, now I'm not just leaving my team. I might leave my fraternity. I might leave student government. I might leave these
Mm-hmm.
relationships that I've developed, and
Mm-hmm.
it adds a different level of connection to the institution.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the other thing to recognize for I was on a panel discussion yesterday is, you know, college coaches don't get the same uh, the same length of time that maybe a coach got 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches getting maybe 3 to 5 years, and they gotta be successful. So the thought is, hey, we could recruit these high school kids, and you know, the kid can get here. He doesn't like it. He may not even want to play college basketball. But I know that if I go in this portal, I can get somebody that's got up at 5 in the morning to go to weights. They've gone to study hall. They've done college level work. Um, they know what it is to get up and lift, and they've got some demonstrated. They've got film to show that they can play on this level.
Mhm.
So I think, when you look at the portal, you got to look at why the portal has become so valuable. And I think high school athletes have to really look at themselves, but parents have to also become a bit more knowledgeable about this process and what they need to be developing in their young student athletes as they look to become college athletes. Um, I don't think uh, I don't think what's happening with the transfer portal, Casey, is going to. I don't think it's going to change. I think again,
Mhm.
coaches they've got to maybe start to prepare like junior colleges and say, hey, you can come to us. We'll we'll help you develop. We'll put you on a platform. You can come, you can ball out, and then we'll help you get to your next institution.
Mhm. What what guidance would you have for maybe current sport management leadership students that want to segue into the athletic administration or college coaching, for example, and they see these things, right? They see the transfer portal, but then they also see NIL, right? And not always, but sometimes there's a connection, right, between the two. And so I think there's this misconception that the transfer portal is somehow this result of NIL, and students are transferring based on NIL deals. But then we also have a lot of mid-major schools that students aren't getting these NIL deals. Maybe they're more collective. Maybe it's more the program or the university. So talk about that a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts on its? It's they're not connected, right, all the time, right, depending on what your situation is.
Yeah, I speak and do some stuff. We do a lot of work with our sports management program here, and one of the things that I talk to our sports management students about is don't be afraid to volunteer, right? And getting them to understand and recognize everybody's trying to be in sports.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to work in sports. So you really got to be intentional about what it is that's different and unique and valuable about you that sets you apart. Um, and being willing to to volunteer, like everything that you do will not be attached to a paycheck.
Mhm.
But what it will allow you to do is put your passion, your knowledge, and your enthusiasm on display
Mm.
for sports professionals who may be able to eventually uh, employ you or recommend you for employment to someone
Mhm.
else, right? Um, never. When I was a coach, we would always say, never turn a basketball opportunity down. If you got a
Yep.
chance to go work a camp, if you got a chance to go speak to a group of kids, you never know um, where that opportunity can lead you to. And I
Mhm.
think today, with you talking about NIL and everything being so money driven, that a lot of students, I can't, you're not paying me, I can't do it. And they really miss out on the opportunity to gain great experience, but also to build their network, right?
Mm.
And it's not about who you know; it's really about who knows you and what they
Yep.
know about you. And if they can
Yeah.
pick up a phone and make a call for you, and talk about who you are, what your qualities are, right? It's not enough just to know people; it's what they can say about who you are and what you've done. Um,
Yep. I say it all the time too. And I go back to like my personal experience as an undergrad at Temple, and we had two internship programs. And Part of that was just an accumulation of industry related experience, right? So, we had opportunities to do things, even if it was a one off, right? Maybe it was like working like they have the Broad Street Run, for example, right? You could volunteer for that. Or on a higher scale, it'd be like uh, the New York City Marathon, whatever. And so I continued that personally over the years as just ways to connect with different communities. Super Bowl came to Tampa a few years ago. I volunteered to work as part of the, being a community ambassador. Um, what about you? Some of the things you did outside of maybe basketball camps or whatever that you look back
Oh
and you're like,
man,
that was a great experience volunteering. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
uh, we used to do when I was an undergrad. Um, used to be orientation leaders. You know what I mean? Where you could come in and you get an opportunity uh, to be orientation leaders for the incoming freshman class.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know you're meeting these young students, but you're also meeting their parents, and you don't know how that connection could, what that could provide for you. It's a quote: "Never take for granted that small doors can open up into big rooms, and
Mm.
um, opportunities, be them big or small. You never know what can come from it." Casey, I another thing that I did a lot of when I first started coaching on a college. I knew I wanted to coach in college,
Mm.
but you're coaching it. You're trying to coach at these schools, and a lot of times those jobs wouldn't be full-time jobs.
Right.
I would always look at other jobs at
Mm-hmm.
the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was a resident advisor in undergrad. So I remember, when I went to coach at Lincoln, I was taking a coaching job at Lincoln. I also applied for a resident director job there.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm a full time employee. I'm in the residence hall with the student, the
Mm-hmm.
kids on my team, right? So I think a lot of times we got to be really ingenuitive in trying to make things work for us in the way
Mm-hmm.
we want them, especially in sport, right? Because in sport, it's not always going to be a straight line, right?
Yep.
And you got to be really uh, agile in trying to find different ways to make it work for you. And as a young professional, I had various student life experience. I had
Mm-hmm.
I had residence life experience, right? But I had worked in mental health facilities when I was an undergrad, right? So that prepared me to be able to do some different things on a college campus.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when I was in graduate school, I went to graduate school later in life. I got my master's in. Uh, I took a GA position at like 35. I lived in a residence hall, um, coached, but I was able to display other experiences. The next thing I know, I was running a residence hall, I was coaching, and then I steered a multicultural student affairs office.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, never, I think it's important for today's professionals, not just sports management professionals, but being open to being able to do different things, not being so focused on coaching or sport that you're not able to do some other things that can ultimately get you back and keep you in the sport. Um, but really being open to some other things in and around higher ed and college sports.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that reminds me too of just skill building, right? I've been reading a lot of articles lately about they're looking for skills now. Like, not to say the degree doesn't matter, but they really hit on, okay, what did you do at said institution or company or whatever? That's great that you may be at, this big company, but like, what did you do? What type of metrics or, certifications do you have? Things like this.
Right.
So, and a lot more of that come about. And I know, like, for me, it's funny you said, um, residence life. I decided to segue a few years ago. to get some experience on the academic side of like camps, and I applied for like a resident assistant position for a pre-college program, right? And I wanted to do it. I think it was at California, maybe like UCLA, something like that. And I'm getting offered, not in California, because they had them all over the country. And they're like, "Oh, we have opportunity for you, but it's not California. It's in Massachusetts." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And end up being in Tufts University outside of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And um, instead of a resident assistant, I talked with the director, and he's like, "Actually, I want you to manage resident assistants, right? I want you to be a head of house." So I was like one of maybe 5 or 6 people managing like a variety of people. So that was more leadership experience. So that's also like, you never know, like you said, when one door closes, another door opens. Um, so outside of that, like we talked about skills, anything else as far as like leadership that you want to hit on that it's not something you pick up in a book or you could read about? Like um, where can students find like qualities and values of being a great leader?
I leadership is like a central. Uh, it's something that I think a great deal about. It's something that
Mm-hmm.
I watch a great deal. Um, that in my position as deputy director of athletics, I support the leadership of our athletic director,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, having an opportunity to have been a head coach before, but also being an assistant coach. I think one of the greatest experiences I've had been able to have is um, being an assistant coach, becoming a head coach, and then becoming an assistant coach again, because I had a greater understanding of what I needed to be in my support role to the head coach. Um, and a lot of times when we're in positions where we support others' leaderships, we're just trying to get our ideas out. And hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then when they don't do them, we get an attitude, we're in our feelings. And, you know, as I continue on my leadership journey, I've learned that my responsibility in the support of someone's leadership is to provide suggestions and information.
Mm-hmm.
What it is they do with that, that's for them to do. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not for me to take it any way or in my feelings. Um, I'm going to support whatever decision is made by the leader. And I think that's important for young professionals to really recognize that that to really be able to minimize their ego. And they may be very knowledgeable and they may have the right answer, right? But only your job is to provide that information to the leader. And then it's up to the leader to do what that requires.
Mm-hmm.
I think many young people don't truly understand the burden of leadership. They want to be in positions of leadership, but they don't really understand what that means. Um, and I watch leaders throughout in different sects of humanity, coaches, college presidents, um, athletic directors. I watch people in everyday life and how they lead and what it is they model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my biggest, what I try to hold myself to is I want to make sure that I'm modeling the things that I'm asking others to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy for me to just say, hey, you need to do this, hey, you need to do that. But if I can't walk in that and hold myself to that same standard, then my leadership is hollow.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I would say, leadership is not about you. It's not about you being in a position of power. It's really being in a position to better serve those you're leading. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the greatest purpose of leadership is not to build compliant followers. It's to build more leaders. It's for me to help you see your capacity to lead and grow, and develop other people. So I would tell, we talked about books and different things. I tell people all the time, you try to read, watch um, as much as you can about leadership, about what it truly looks like, but also watching bad leadership,
Mhm.
right? And the impacts of that. Um, but recognizing that if in we're in people driven industries, if you're not continuing to learn and grow as a leader, the people that you're leading are doomed because
Mhm.
they can't grow because you're not. So really always being intentional about wanting to grow and develop yourself. I listen to things in the car. I listen to things in bed in the morning, in the shower. All things that I'm trying to work into my subconscious to continue to help me to grow
Mhm.
in the ways that I need to and be better for those I've been blessed to support and lead.
That's great. That reminds me of a coaching tree, right? Like when we talk about the success of one coach and then that trickles out to like other assistants who become head coaches, and then it just keeps on growing like an actual tree, right? And so I think you bring up like a really great visual if someone could picture a tree and instead of coach, you put leader, right? And it's like leaders build other leaders, and if you don't, then that branch will die off, and then
Yes.
so that's a great visual. um Last thing I want to hit on is any guidance that you have for any um, up and coming industry professionals, whether it be sport, recreation, athletic administration, coaching. What guidance do you have for them, or feedback that could help them in their career with where they're at right now, whether it be in school or maybe even looking to get into graduate school?
Yeah. Again, Casey, I would, never pass up an opportunity to serve.
Hmm.
Uh, you never know where opportunities will lead you to and what can come from them. Um, Another thing that I would say is uh, it's one thing to be really knowledgeable about what's going on right now, but if you can start to expand your lens and conceptualize where things are headed, where are we moving to, right?
Hmm.
And I have a book. Uh, it's called Higher Hyper Learning, right? And
Hmm.
so one of the things it shares about in here is that by the year 2030, uh, over 50% of jobs uh, in globally will be automated.
Hmm. Interesting.
So when you start to think about what that means, you start to think about the majors that kids are going to are in school for today. How is that preparing them for the next 10, 15 years when they're out in the job market?
Hmm.
So I bring that up because Casey, the one thing is as we move more to an AI based um, infrastructure and economy, what doesn't change is our ability to do this
Hmm.
for us to connect. And if you're able to improve on the value you're able to offer to another person, you're always going to have value in this economy. And I think people take that for granted, Casey. And if you think about it, like young people, and not just young people, we've taken a step back in the way that we engage each other coming out of COVID.
Hmm.
Casey, we're still in, I get on a call with some of our student athletes, they still got their cameras off,
Hmm.
right? And we're hearing about young people interviewing for jobs with their Zoom interviews and their cameras are off. So I say that to say we as human beings have to to continue to improve what it is and how we add value to one another, right? Coaches, how are you elevating and motivating and mobilizing people? Because that's
Hmm.
not something that a machine can do.
Mhm.
So if we want to be able to still stay viable as this ecosystem continually evolves and changes, we've got to be able to improve how we connect with other people. And that's a skill that you can grow and develop.
100%. So for anyone out there, the book is called Discarding the Mask, Kyle Adams. If you want to pick it up on Amazon, we'll put a link in the description box below. But for everyone else, I'm going to leave Kyle with the last words. And also, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? How can they get in touch with you?
No, Casey, again, thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation with you. And these are things that I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about helping people grow and develop. Um, I'm passionate about my own growth and development. And Casey, I appreciate you sharing about the book. You can find that on Amazon. It's also um, I did the audio book. It's on Audible. But I also have a podcast, the It's Bigger Than the Ball podcast. It's on all um, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. It's on all uh, podcast platforms. Um, but I'm old school. My email address is kadams@desu.edu. My phone number is 302-367-3360. Uh, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My Twitter and Instagram are Coach KA20. Um, and if there's anything that I can do to help any of your students in any way, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you again, Casey, for this opportunity.
Appreciate it. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. See you on the next one.